So, first thing, Marc Canter is convincing, even though I didn't understand exactly what you convinced me about.
Was I talking too fast?
No, it was not about talking too fast. It was about a very broad vision. And maybe we want now to make it less broad and more sort of applicable. Let's see how it happens.
Certo.
Because Tom is about open data. Mm-hmm. And Ivo is about what to do better than go to the gym. So if we can manage to put together a panel with this variety of interests, it's going to be fun. I don't know how long we have, so Paolo will tell us.
1 hour.
1 hour?
Mm.
So
Mamma mia.
we need to manage this.
To me, that's a long time.
Yeah. And one thing that you were talking about a lot was jobs, of course. And we also have a lot of things to say about jobs in Italy. For example, freelance, you call them, we call them precari, which means people that are not sure about their job. They have a job, but they don't know if it will stay, it will continue to be a job. And for you, that's sort of normal. For us, it's a very deep suffering. You're not sure.
Because society wants you to think that. Because they want you to want the full-time secure job.
Right.
But let me ask you this. Is there such a thing as a secure job? If you're working for Telecom Italia, you're working for Fiat, is that secure?
It's sure that you're going to be bored, but it's not secure as a
until
job.
the layoffs come, right?
But, so, this is the mindset that we're going to change. And maybe your platform is going to help doing this. By the way, you also asked if we also have in Italy something called private-public partnerships. Yes, we do. We are also improving our law about private-public partnership, and we call it about corruption. And we are very keen to create new private-public partnerships that are not corrupt. So there are many things to do, and the major idea is how we create a project of a city, of a place, in which we can generate new jobs by generating new companies, startups, new ideas,
So this is the first
projects.
problem. Right now the system is designed to put all the emphasis on companies. And all the money goes to companies. And this is a refined art form in America, where all the money goes to the companies. The companies are the parents, and then the parents hire the children called employees. And the problem is that the parents aren't always good parents. And so this is the simple model. Put the emphasis on the individual, not the companies. You see? And that is the future. Because there's a lot of money being spent. The money is there, but it gets stolen by these crooks called companies.
So let's see what you have in mind, because we know, and that's what a regular journalist can ask, that new jobs are created by new companies.
Sometimes.
That's what statistics say.
Because
big
those statistics are economists who are all based upon the old model.
Let me ask. Statistics say that big companies don't hire anymore, they don't create jobs. Old, small companies, they don't hire.
Because they don't have money.
They don't have money. The only visible way that you have in statistics that create new jobs is creating new companies. So where does this fit in your vision?
So first of all, the entrepreneurial spirit has to expand beyond just companies. So an entrepreneur is not just someone who is a CEO, who hires a CTO, who gets venture capital, who hires people. That's some growth. About 40% are venture capital funded jobs. What we have to understand is that when someone becomes a freelance photographer and he goes out, he's not doing that because he suffers, he's doing that because he loves to be a photographer. Now, he then has the challenge to find the projects, okay? And what we have to realize is that our society is a project-based economy now.
Yeah.
So rather than thinking that the company creates the job, it's the projects that create the job.
Right.
And the projects would hire a wide range of people.
That's very good. So let's see an application of this idea if you want to talk about your project. So there is something better than going to the gym. What's better to do that?
Well, I think we're sort of on the other end of the spectrum. You seem to have a vision for solving, you know, many of the problems of cities today. I'm working on one very small, specific problem to start with. And so, yeah, my problem is gyms. So gyms are a waste of energy. You go in and you pump your energy into these machines and they achieve nothing. Gyms are also some of the least energy efficient buildings in the world. So what I wanted to do was work out a way that we could use that energy for some more useful goal. And so that's why I set up a company called Good Gym, a not-for-profit company, and we connect people who want to get fit with physical tasks that benefit their community. So we're connecting people a lot with elderly, immobile people, people who are stuck at home and don't see people for, you know, sometimes days in a row. And so our people run to their house, deliver them the newspaper, check they're okay, check the smoke alarm, and run home again. We also do many tasks in groups that are sort of like running flash mobs for good, where we'll run to a place, fix the problem, run home again. But I think there is, I don't know, a broader connection in this that I think connects this idea of exposing need. And I think that's one of the big problems that our cities face at the moment is actually at an individual level, we're very unaware of the needs in our local community. We don't know who needs what. We don't know how we could help. So I think the challenge is to design systems that help to expose that need in a way that we can start to interact with. Just on this subject of jobs, I was worried during your talk, but sort of reassured in this in your discussion afterwards about this idea of the job. I think the idea of a job or an occupation creates an illusion of stability. And I think what happens with companies when they go badly is they become out of touch with the needs. Instead of trying to address a real need, the organization works towards organizational sustainability rather than towards addressing any specific need.
Exactly. They perpetuate a lie, which is this job will be here forever.
Yes.
And we all know that's a lie.
And so I think what's happening, I think this project-based economy is exactly right, but it needs better mapping of needs in order to work. So the economist and sociologist Ronald Coase wrote a piece about companies, and he was asking, why do companies exist? So if you have this world in which everyone should be competing with each other under capitalism, why then do we create these organizations that have structured levels? Why do we have this idea of equality at these different levels? And you know, why isn't everyone an independent contractor, like what you're suggesting? And what he said was that it was pretty much transaction cost. It was the cost of setting up those different relationships that means that companies need to exist. And now I think we can question that because the transaction costs are so low, because we now can form an organization, a bit like, I was using this metaphor at lunch, a bit like the way that the film industry works. Instead of creating a new company to make the film and then those people continually working together, you have a specific aim, a specific need, you assemble the team, they work together brilliantly, intensely, and then disperse. That idea now, I think, can be applied to a lot of different sort of social and
And certainly for
political
people
aims.
who've registered in a system, who've gone through a training, maybe one of the things they want to do is work with your project and get exercise. And then later on they want to be a photographer, and later on they want to be a salesperson. Right? It's the same person, they're just doing 3 different kinds of jobs.
But so I think what your system needs to do is start from some kind of need. And I think employment in itself is not a need. That it's a secondary need. It's something that supports other tasks.
Another dream I have is, like, as a small businessman, as our company grows, I have to book my travel, do all the secretarial work that typically a secretary would do. But because I'm a small company, I can't afford a full-time secretary. So I would like to be able to call up and get a personal assistant for 3 hours to do this and 2 hours to do that. And that's this kind of on-demand skills that I'm talking about.
And I think that is already starting to happen. There's this company in the States that's just got about 27 million of investment called TaskRabbit that is almost exactly that. You can auction off, you can put out any task, no matter how small. Exactly. I think what's going to become more interesting is where a similar infrastructure and similar quality of infrastructure gets applied directly to the social needs instead of just the commercial ones.
Yeah, I think your project is fantastic. And also, I should speak for my friend Tone, which is working to explain to government how that all this information that they have, they could surface it and make it applicable and available to the rest of us, how that can then also help drive these digital economy ecosystems.
Why don't we ask Tom to
maybe that's a good idea. I'm actually one of those people you call freelancers, and I usually say I own my own job. So I'm not saying that I'm my own CEO on LinkedIn, because that seems over the top, but I own my own job. And that's only possible because of what you're saying, that everything that I need to be able to do the different things that I do used to be only available inside company structures. So that all the information that I needed, all the production resources that I needed, and all the contacts, all the other people that I needed would be in there. That's no longer the case. So I could disengage from corporate structures and start my own thing. In the end, that turned out to be much more secure than having a permanent job, because with my permanent job, I could be terminated at 2 months' time. And my horizon is now usually a year or more. So it brought more security and more flexibility to move around. Now with the economy changing, I simply change subjects. I go to a different place. And most of the things that have to do with pushing tools and possibilities, and one of them is government data, into the hands of individuals to be able to create more of their own work. In the Netherlands, about 10% of the workforce is self-employed, so this is one-person businesses, and that's 2/3 of all the companies in the country. So if you look in the trade register where all the companies are registered, 2/3 are one-person businesses. These are people who own their own job. And what you say happens. Our Ministry of Finance recently said that they weren't true entrepreneurs. They were not adding jobs to the economy. I thought, well, maybe about 10%, because it's 10% of the workforce right now. But he presented them as leeches who drew money out of bigger structures. That was really, really weird. So for me, it's about pushing possibilities, tools, resources into the hands of individuals where they previously were only available to larger structures. And one of those things is opening up government data. The government holds lots and lots of data about all the different public tasks that they perform. And they collect that to do their work, and then the data sits there in databases, in archives, and it doesn't get used anymore because the public task has been executed. If you free that data up and give access to everybody to the same data, we could actually use it to better understand our own direct living environment and use it to guide our own decisions instead of waiting for somebody else, some institution, to interpret what is happening and telling me what to do. So it enables me to, in my own city, which is a rather chaotic and complex environment where lots of things are happening at the same time, for me to be able as an individual to perceive that city at an abstract level, I need the type of access to information and data that normally only the big institutions have. And that's why open data is, for me, is important, because it will allow us to see ourselves and see our location in that big chaotic, complex structures that we are part of, that we call society, and it will help us navigate.
Let me figure out a little bit of synthesis. We just had a panel before lunch that was, to me, based on the idea that knowledge is social, and that the organization is the way we live. I mean, we live together with other people. Now we are talking about jobs, and we are individual again. So where the two things fit in the system that organizes individuals to be better together with the others is in a new culture about not waiting for an old ways job for the whole life, so it's culture, or is the economy that is changing and it will never be as it was before, so we will just need to understand it and find new opportunities. It's the system, it's the culture, it's economy that will put together the two sides of the problem. The fact that we are social, and we are not happy if we are not social. And as workers, we have individual jobs.
Well, I think both the speakers, the English speakers earlier, said it. We have to be part of networks. Okay? So that's how you find your job, right? So people know you're a good photographer, people know you're a good salesperson, so when they have the need, they know who to call. So you have to be a member of one or more networks to be able to get your work. Well, at the same time, what Mr. Snowden was saying was that you have to anticipate the worst case scenario. Plan for the flood. So if you're a photographer, beautiful, but also maybe you should be a salesperson too. Maybe you should also go do some other work, because you can fall back to the photography, but you can't necessarily rely upon it all the time. So the average worker, the smart worker, will have more than one skill set. And then he has extra time, go get some exercise and help some old people, you know? So an average person who is able to navigate in this world will work their way up. Now, what I was trying to say is that not everybody's going to be able to do that. So you're going to end up with these stratas of society. Strati, multiple. Okay? So you have the programmers, then you have the really skilled people, and then the pretty good skilled people, and then the whole thing comes down. And then it's up to us to support each other, to continue to train, to allow people to work their way up.
So if I can add, we were indeed discussing jobs as sort of individual things, but my work isn't individual. I own my own job, but I never work alone. In all the projects that I do, we create ad hoc teams of people from my network that fit the task at hand, and then together we solve it, and then we dissolve again as a team, and we go on to find other tasks.
Another project.
And so I own my own job in the sense that I am in control of where I am navigating in my network and who I bring in and who brings me in, but it's always a collective effort embedded in the communities that we are part of. So it's social and individual right at the same time.
And the most important thing in your experience, it needs to be something like this. It's contracts or trust.
Well, I think it's about this, I think there's something inherently social about the individual accountability that you get in the type of environment that we're talking about. So in your situation, you are, inherently accountable. You do a bad job of one job. You can't hide. You're not sheltered behind some corporate identity.
This is what you don't do in a normal job. You can hide behind your incompetence and rely upon the fact that your paycheck will keep coming, and this is why so much of society is inefficient, and this is a big problem.
But so trust, I think, is very interesting, because actually I think when these types of system are working well, you actually need less trust, because you have such fantastic evidence that, Ton has done a good job, or that this is the right type of a person to employ, because you can see their track record much more transparently than previously. Yeah. So actually your requirement to sort of trust, to have sort of blind faith, is actually reduced. Whether we call that trust or not is a different question. But our ability to work with someone that we previously have not had any contact with before is greatly increased.
Now this brings up something interesting. So the world that Tone exists in where the government is both one side dictating what a job is, and then they're collecting data on the job, and now he's saying we can get access to that data. Well, in my case, maybe I don't need that data because that's the wrong data, right? And in fact, when you think about trust, this is the number one thing the government needs. Who here believes politicians? Nobody believes, I don't. Nobody believes politicians because the words that come out of their mouth is all bullshit. Because there's nothing that they say comes true. So the number one thing they need to do is to understand what the job is of the future and help facilitate that. And then they will build trust and bridge the gap between us and them. It's the key thing.
So it's exactly... You have really helped me for the next question, because here in Italy, how many are Italians here?
Also.
Yeah, so we can speak a little bit about the Italian situation with your experience, because we are experiencing, as you know, a very stressful situation. We pay a lot of taxes, we have a lot to work, we are unsure, our money is going to fade away and everything. And one thing that we have this year is a strange kind of government. Actually, we had these crazy guys before. We know that the next year we will have again some crazy guys, one way or the other. And this year we have these people that are professors, bankers, professors, and they are sort of doing their job on the metaphor that they will stop being at the government next year. So they are just there for 1 year. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they are saying and what we are thinking. And one of the things that they are doing is working for creating an environment that is more free to create new jobs. They changed the jobs law in a way that is very much discussed, but it's about having companies the ability to fire people in an easier way, which is thought to be a way to have companies hire people easier.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think if I fire someone, I should have to pay their salary for 2 years? I mean, does that seem real?
So
because that's the law, right?
I was describing the kind of thoughts that they have. They are changing the pension system, so it's very much harder to think about your pension. And the general thinking is that the economy is harder, you need to be engaged more, there is nobody that is sure, but there is also some kind of magical economic system that thinks that when a market is better organized, money comes from somewhere to invest. So this is the general idea, and it doesn't seem to be very convincing to our people. They are doing their duties. They are paying, some of them, they are voluntarily paying taxes. As you know, in Italy it's voluntarily activity. But they are doing it, they are working, and it's a great country. They are doing many things. One of the things that we have that is special is entrepreneurs. We have lots of entrepreneurs, and the 90% of them, they have 3 employees. It's a very small kind of companies that we have. So the best part of the program of this government should be helping creating new companies. And that is also self-employing. It's the same kind of thing. We have, I don't know how many million freelancers, we call them partita IVA. You see the meaning of that. Partita IVA, it's the way you pay taxes when you are a freelance. Okay? So we call them from the fiscal point of view, tax point of view, not from the project point of view. The idea of creating new companies is an idea that stresses the project part. And they will make a new law that will enable Italians to create new companies easier. But where they are not thinking enough, and it's clear, and I know that because I worked in a task force that was about this stuff, is that they are thinking like that if there will be a new law that facilitates creating new companies, they will be created. While there is something that is lacking, and I know you three like this kind of angle, and it's the fact that society needs to be energetic and entrepreneurial and project-oriented in a way that grabs the opportunity of the new law. If you give a new law to a society that is sleeping, they will not create new companies. They will create new companies if it is a city that is very active, motivated, they already have projects, they are already doing projects, and they will be facilitated and accelerated.
Yeah.
Right? So, what's your take on creating an environment that is more energetic towards having projects and not waiting for somebody to give you a project? Because I don't think that is only rationality that will create that. It's social networks that will help that.
Yeah.
It's systems, platforms that will help that. But there is something more. I don't trust politicians to give us this energy.
Right.
So where did you find in your traveling places that are energetic enough to be willing to do their projects and to be able to create new jobs like those that you were talking about?
I think there's a few interesting points in response to that. The first is that if you talk to any entrepreneurs, all the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs always say that their new company came from a problem that they had. You know, they had an itch to scratch, and they had this problem, and they developed this company, this product, to solve that problem that they themselves had, right? So it starts with a very, very tangible problem, a tangible challenge, something in real life that needs to be solved. So that's what I think you need to work towards doing. And I think actually this idea of the company as a sort of solution is a bit of a, you know, it's a bit of a red herring. It's a bit of a mistake. Seeing the company as the symbol of success is not right. It has an illusion of sustainability. The sign of success should be the completion of the project, the completion of the task, the outputs of that organization. So I think a focus on companies is immediately a mistake. I think what we need to do in terms of what the government policy should be about is supporting, you know, collectives of individuals or maybe single individuals to complete tasks that need to be done. So it's not about creating jobs, not about creating companies, but about achieving real things that need to be solved. So, and I think on top of that, it comes back to what I was saying initially is, let's expose these problems. Let's see what the real problems that government is dealing with, and let's allow people the ways in to do that. If we knew what the problems are in our area, if we were a little bit more aware of the challenges in our lives, then I think then you can step up to do that. And then I think there is a little bit about education in that it's saying to people, everyone who comes through the education system, if you see a challenge, we want you to tackle it. We want to help. And if you can't do it on your own, we'll help you find the right people to do that. And there needs to be minimal barriers in order to set up that team and start working.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, I know a lot of civil servants in the Dutch ministries, and the policy side people of that usually think that if we've changed the law, that they've changed reality. And when you then start asking them, so how are you going to implement the law? And then they said, well, we just did. We published it in the State Gazette, in the State Journal, and now reality has changed, which is, of course isn't true. And if you want to find the pockets of motivation and the pockets of energy that you're asking for, to a certain extent they don't exist, because a lot of us are being told continuously or signaled continuously that it's not really appreciated that you have energy and motivation for things that you aren't really explicitly asked for. And it took me about 12 years to get rid of that programming, basically, and think it's perfectly fine to try different things out. And yes, 80% of them fail. Who cares? 20% of them turn into something that is of value to me and the people I work with and the people I work for. So I've also learned to go out and create pockets of energy. And that starts usually with an itch to scratch, an actual problem. In the Netherlands, if you have road construction works, there's usually a sign, situation altered, please switch off your GPS. Because precisely where the road has changed, the navigation system does not work. Because that data is not available to the navigation software companies. There's precisely where you don't know your way, there's a sign, switch off your navigation, because it will point you towards the wrong direction. I and a colleague, we sort of asked around, is there anybody doing any work on this? And it turned out nobody did. So we said, even though we have nothing in terms of an interest in navigation software, we do have connections to government. So we said, okay, let's try and set up a meeting between different cities who have this information and the 4 biggest navigation software suppliers in the country, and Google and Nokia, and bring them together in one room and let's discuss this. Now, we have basically no stake in that discussion, but we're seeing a place where there's a lack of energy. So we started organizing a conversation. Now, it might turn into something, might turn into absolutely nothing, we don't know. But it started with creating that little conversation. And I do that all the time. Most of them go nowhere. Some of them do, and that's when you start creating something.
So where the internet comes into action?
All right, so I will talk about energy and jobs, okay? Watch this. First of all, sit on the edge of your seat. Don't sit back, sit forward. Use the internet. Produce local events, okay? You can get your friends together, 10 people, and watch, the football game, okay? You can then bring in something else and sell some food. You make some food, you sell some food, you make some money. Okay? It's called service. All right? You create something and you sell it to somebody else. Maybe then someone says, oh, I love your pasta. I love the way you cut the prosciutto. Okay, you come work for me. Okay? You don't sit back and wait for someone to come to you. You go to them. That's called being an entrepreneur. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, then let the other entrepreneurs know, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. Can you hire me? Because I need a job. You have to talk. You have to do something to get excitement going. You cannot sit back in your chair. You have to sit forward, and you have to use the internet as the great communication device it is to communicate with people. You create your networks of people, and you say, I know this. I have this much time. I'm willing to work for this much money. You have to be proactive. That's key.
Okay, but let's focus, and I ask you, on the internet platform that is right to help this kind of dynamics. Because we know the platform is information-based, but the metaphor of the platform has a lot to do with the behavior of people that use them.
Right now, people use Facebook to waste their time.
Right.
They can turn it into a way to make money.
So there are, yeah, I absolutely agree that there is a relationship between the metaphor and the behavior, and the metaphor of being friends is not about finding money. The metaphor of being friends is friend. the metaphor of Wikipedia is creating the new encyclopedic knowledge for free for everybody. It's another metaphor. And people that works for Wikipedia, they have a completely different behavior than those that are on Facebook, even though they can be the same person.
So I think an interesting thing is going on in those terms. I think that the more useful in terms of employment, in terms of trust, in terms of reliability, a social network is, the more closely associated it is with the reality of that person's life. And I think over the last 10 years or 20 years, we've created this new idea that we have a right to have multiple identities. We have this new idea that it's my right to be a different person on Twitter to how I am on Facebook, to how I am on LinkedIn. So we've started to separate these different aspects of our lives. And, before 50, 60 years ago, that wasn't possible. We didn't feel we had this right to have these different identities. So I think it will be very interesting to see what happens in terms of who wins, whether it's Google or it's Facebook or it's whoever who becomes the real arbiter of our identity. The people who can choose that is the real Ivo. The person that can choose who decides that person's real or not.
There's something scary in the way you're talking about that.
But there isn't. I don't think there is something scary. I think we've before 50, 60 years ago, we were okay. This is me. I'm happy with that. I can let you see this. Now that we've created these projections of ourselves, we have all these different identities going around. And I think what will happen is we will come back to the idea that there is one Luca or one Ivo, and that when that happens, we will have an enormous amount of accountability. Yes, we will have responsibility for how much information you put out there and what forms that person, but it will be a much more unified idea of you. At that point, we then have, you will really know why that person, got sacked from that job, as you would have in a village, 200 years ago. We will have real detail, and once we have that real detail, I think you will have a lot more equity and a lot more efficiency in this economy. Yes, there are scary things about that, like true accountability, but I think we have to accept it.
Actually, I think
the scary part,
the
scary part was about who will win, Google or Facebook will decide who I really am. That was scary. But the real thing that you said is, if I understand correctly, is that the real metaphor of the network will coincide, will be the territorial platform.
And I think it's actually internet that caused that for me. I mean, because I don't recognize your observation at all. Because it used to be for me that I had separate identities in separate contexts in which I was operating. I was a different person at school than I was on the sports field, than I was at home in my family. And still when I returned to my parents, I sort of slipped back into the child role, as it were. And the internet created a lot of context collapse. The most scary thing that ever happened to me was in the early days of LinkedIn, when I was using LinkedIn to maintain contacts with people in the United States. And all of a sudden, my fraternity friends from university started creating profiles. So all of a sudden, there was this link to me drinking beer and getting drunk, and and that was scary. But by now, I'm accustomed to it. So yes, I have become sort of more of one person, but that was a scary process because it used to be very much separated.
We've always had separate persona. When I go to church, it's different than when I go out drinking or when I'm at work, right? Question. Questions from the audience.
So it seems there is time for questions for the audience.
Yeah, there was a sign there, yeah.
And,
very good.
And so if there are
on the front row there, come on.
I'm absolutely blind, so I don't know who is going to.
Over there. Questions from the audience.
If you want to.
Questions from
here
the
it's
audience.
easy because it's near.
Microphone, please.
Hi. This is not really a question, just a stimulus, because when we compare point of view about working in Italy and the US and the rest of the world, I think we miss a fundamental fact. In Italy, work is a constitutional right. The first article of our constitution says that Italy is founded on work. It's a pretty generic statement, but in the typical Italian mindset is intended literally. A work exists by itself, and some entities bigger than me, as the government, Italy itself, or big companies, should give me one piece of work for me.
So let me ask you a question, my friend. How's it going?
I'm not saying that...
How's it going?
Yes, okay.
No, it doesn't sound too good to me.
Self-explanatory. I'm saying that because in your words, I'm feeling that it's very natural for you getting things done, identifying a need, and solving a problem by creating my own work. But it is quite the opposite of the typical Italian mind. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm saying that maybe some generation had to pass before Italian minds became different. So my personal point of view is to shift from the right of a real tangible work should be transformed in the right of the chance of creating a work. Mm-hmm. The right of pursuing a work or a project.
I heard some stories down in the south of Italy that when a factory goes out of business, the government will guarantee to keep the workers working. So now I, as a capitalist, all I have to figure out is what do I want the factory to do, and the government will pay me money to do it. This is why you're broke. This is stupid. This is crazy. This is not good. Stop that immediately. Okay? The other thing you should stop immediately is a government person who's hired for a government job, one job. You don't get to have multiple jobs as a government employee. You can't be an elected official and a judge and a this and a that. One job for one employee. I mean, this is apparently not what goes on in this country. Again, stupido. Stop that immediately. Okay? Well, the size of the cost of Italy's government is equal to the cost of Germany and France combined. That says it all right there. You're spending way too much money on government. That's a problem.
Well, let me tell you, with all my honesty and friendship and admiration for Americans, that you also have some glitches in your system.
Just a couple of problems. Just a couple of little problems.
And we're sort of paying for that.
Yeah.
No, that's called Wall Street. That's not America.
And Wall Street is in America, as I know.
Can I also respond to Luca?
Tone wants to respond.
I recognize what you described. It's actually hard to go from having sort of the notion that something will be there for you to start working on and sort of having to create your own opportunities. I wasn't schooled to see opportunities and find out ways to, with my network, turn that into something that might become work or not. So I had to unlearn a lot before I was actually able to permit myself to act on the things that I saw. And now it seems that every year I see more and more opportunities, and I got frustrated by not having the time to actually do something about them. But I had to unlearn quite a lot and sort of go against the sort of the general attitude around me. So why are you interested in all these strange things? Because I thought it was an opportunity, but I wasn't really in society not really permitted to talk about it and treat it as such. So I had to become very obstinate over time and to allow myself to do that. And now it seems that ever since then, all my hobbies turn into work. So I'm always eager to try out new hobbies because I've learned that over time they will become work.
I think there's also an interesting question about how different your type of work looks at the very low-paid end.
Certainly.
So I think, you know, if you look at the people using LinkedIn, probably 95% of them are consultants. Not that many of them are factory workers.
Exactly.
So I think LinkedIn becomes extremely interesting when people, as I say, start to share their wage, and when 95% of them are workers rather than consultants.
At the same time, last week I was at a conference in Austria, and it was about what they call basic education. So this is teaching to adults who do not have the basic reading and writing skills. And we were having a discussion on what from the internet, what from all these new tools and skills do we need to add to basic education? What is new type of basic literacy? And I sort of defended the point there that being aware of how you can operate in social networks, and not the digital representations of them, but the actual networks that you're part of, should be one of those basic skills that we should be sort of aware of on how to change and improve the quality of our network. Normally we see it as a given. We're born somewhere, we die somewhere, and we meet people along the way. So that network awareness should then be a basic skill. And I'm pretty sure we all already have a pretty good starting point for that, because we're social people. And so if we start treating that as something that we can change and that you can use tools to change, that might actually be also for the workers. And they don't have to be on LinkedIn, but it would give them the opportunity to shape their own surroundings quite more purposefully, I would say.
So exactly, this is exactly what my system's about. Questione.
Thank you. I'm personally fascinated by the things and all the projects you showed us, which will be wonderfully to be done in any country in the world. I must admit, but in Italy. In Italy, my friend here reminds us that the first article of the Constitution is talking about work. But Italians misunderstand it and think it's about job. So it means that this country should be built on work, and Italians think it's built on a given job. So this problem aside, the problem is that most of the companies built all over the world came from histories and acts that in these countries are against the law. So I wouldn't bother you. You can find on the internet on how many jokes you can read about if Microsoft or Apple would have been done in Italy. How many acts against the law would have been committed? So my question is towards the future. How can we Italians act on our government in order to give them the opportunity to change the law and the system, to give to Italians self-entrepreneurs to start their new job without running the risk of doing it against the law?
Okay, so if my memory holds correct, many of these laws come from Signore Mussolini. Okay, so first of all, maybe there should be a law. Any law created during Mussolini is illegal. Get rid of all those laws. Okay, that's first law. Second law, we are taught in society right now, and certainly in Italy, I showed a video of the pensioners, and they're taught you work your whole life and you stop working. Now, I can tell you about my grandfather. He worked full-time till he was 75, and he was sharp. He was smart. He was on top of it. And within 1 month of retiring, he started to lose it. So these pensioners who think they want to stop working, they're wrong, because they're going to lose their minds. They have to taper off. We have to tap into their knowledge, into the collective wisdom of our elders. We have to show these people how to use the internet to make money, so that instead of relying 100% on their pension, they can make money else. And then each one tapers off at their own rate. See, this is a falsehood that we discard the elders. Okay? So that's a big problem. Okay? Now, the next thing is that this whole thing, he said, you've got professors now for 1 year until the politicians come back. Okay? And during this time period, you have the ability to break the trend of these corrupt politicians. They're indicting each other. This is going on in Pakistan right now, where they're all arresting each other, you know. And then we know about these former politicians here. You need to break the trend where politicians are elected and they have accountability. And if they say they're going to do something and they don't do it, okay? So you change some laws, you show people the value of tapping into their wisdom, okay? Instead of exploiting them as workers, you tap into them and you say, we celebrate your wisdom, we celebrate your age, we celebrate who you are, and we give you money. We pay you money. If I want to learn how to do something, I ask somebody who's done it before, and I pay them a little bit of money. But it has to be over the internet. We have to realize that there's this wonderful thing called the internet. Now we have this online world, and then we have the real world. And it's where these two worlds come together. That's where the traction is, right there.
One little remark on your first sentence. The platform might work anywhere in the world except in Italy. One of the things that I've learned working on very diverse change processes with very diverse companies in very diverse countries, is that every company in every country, when you start talking about change, say, well, it might work anywhere, but we are different. It's not true. It's an excuse to not get going.
Everybody's different. Vive la différence!
Yeah, the thing is that we are in Trieste, they are humoristic and they are self-criticist a lot. So once you are here for 3 days, you will get somebody tell you that here in Trieste the major motto, the major idea is no se può, which is you can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
no, I understand it because we have that culture in Cleveland.
But
okay?
That's humorism. That's humor. That's humoristic self-criticism because we really.
So I recommend cross-culturalism. So the people who are going to understand the best are the outsiders, because it's very clear to me. Let me tell you something. You don't have such a bad life. You know why? La cucina, la dolce vita. Okay? Let me tell you. Go to Germany, go to England, and try to eat food. Okay? You have a beautiful life here, bellissimo vita. You have a beautiful life, okay? You just need to solve this a little bit of here, a little bit there. I remember, like, I want to pay my gas bill. Sorry, signore, you must go down to the gas office, stand in line to pay the bill. It's crazy, okay? So somebody figured out, oh, I can pay my bill over internet. Now your life is better. Okay? So you just go through all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of laws, these stupid things. Just ask any outsider what is stupid. We'll tell you. Okay? And then fix those. That's what the professors should be doing. Fix the stupid laws and get on with your la dolce vita. I mean, you got a beautiful life. Really.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question for... Sorry?
Go ahead.
I have a question for Marc.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But it's really for everybody.
For everybody, yes.
Okay.
But since you just mentioned a number of good practices and ways to come out from this situation, in a sort of an ideal world, we might take advantage of this period of break in terms of political situation, and then maybe elect people that have the right degree of responsibility and accountability towards us, because we have to vote for them. But the problem is that this break hasn't been the exit, the consequence of voters. It's just the pressure from markets, the spread going up and so forth. And every time in the last 20 years that the active electorate, okay, the citizens have been called to express a new leadership, we ended up with people in power doing exactly the opposite, because these guys during campaigns are able to portray a situation where any crisis we have to blame the euro, we have to blame migrants, we have to... So every time we take our decisions as voters on the basis of portrayal of Italy, which is not true due to the fact that they also own the media basically, we end up with this kind of guys telling us how to behave, basically. So I think that another step should be added is simply to train the people not only to become entrepreneurs, not only to get rid of all the laws in the Mussolini era, as you mentioned now, but also to begin making up their own mind using maybe the internet. So this is a basic step, I think, right now. Let's take advantage of this period of transition.
The theory is that the internet is the great level playing field where truth comes out, where opinion can be equalized, normalized. When you have one guy who's the prime minister who also controls the media, you got a problem. No wonder he keeps getting reelected even though he's a crook. Okay? This is not a mistake. This is his plan. So you use the internet as a great equalizer. But if the people aren't using the internet, now you got a problem. So get the people to use the internet. The people are not going to use the internet unless they get value. They're not going to get value from wasting their time on Facebook. They get value from a job, from a soldi. So you got to figure out some way to get people to make money with soldi. Then the average kid who's at the Barcala right now wasting his time, the average young woman who's taking off her top to get laid or whatever, this is wasting her time. She needs to be on the internet, not on Facebook, figuring out how to develop her skill set so she has something of value to offer so she can get paid, in my opinion.
So guys, it's a real task to talk about jobs. One more question, the last one, please.
Yes, well, I want only to add something, because in Italy we have a problem. We have ministers that are retired, in retirement, and have per day 1,000 euros, which is what other people take in 1 or 2 months. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of people which has a lot of money and pretend a lot of money. If we think about teachers in secondary school, which are sometimes a lot of them are precari, they are not paid all the year, so they take maybe 10,000 euros per year. And we have other people, the director of the Revoltella Museum, for example, that takes 10 times. And we have the general director of the police, who 60 times, which is much more than Mr. Obama has. And these things were already said by Mr. Luttwak, but our politicians do not want to hear the problem.
Change the law. Change the law. Take the money from them. We have the Warren Buffett tax, which of course the Republicans will never vote for. And now we have a new tax called the Robin Hood tax. This is a tax on every Wall Street transaction. Every time something is transacted on Wall Street, take a little money. Okay? This is called law. The citizens went together. Can I sing the song right now? Avanti popolo, no, I'm teasing. Look, I don't care about the politics, but you have to change the law. All you're telling is that there's a law that lets these crooks get away with crime. They're crooks.
Well,
take the money from them.
As you can see, we could speak a lot more about this.
And I have no opinion about this.
I think there's a system.
Context change meanings. Avanti popolo means a little bit a different thing here.
Exactly. But it's a great song.
But
I love the song.
That was a great song. In any case, we will continue after the break with the program. I'm very happy to have had this panel. One thing that is linking the two subjects, jobs and the internet, is that projects are the new word. And the internet is not an automatic machine to create jobs, but is something that helps educate people to the project culture, because every time you have something to do with the internet, you understand that you can do something about something. So it was a pleasure. We'll meet after the break.